So, hi everyone, and welcome to session 5 of OWS called Everything You Need to Know About Digital Marketplaces. I'm here with three of the top players in digital marketplaces. So, Devin Finzer from OpenSea, Kayvon Tehranian from Foundation, and Alan Carr from Dapper Labs. And you can tweet at us with hashtag OWS on Twitter to react to this live stream. So first, what a timing. The NFT or ERC20 hype around digital items has never been higher. Like quick background, in the past month, Fevocious NFT artist got really famous for selling art at only 17 on Ethereum. Jack Brookman NFT is liquid intellectual property. Bullish thesis on NFT also got a lot of traction. There was the socks moment by Uniswap, the meme also talking about NFT farming, so much things. So first, I would love for the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Devin maybe, and we'll continue from it.
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Devin Finzer. I'm CEO and one of the co-founders of OpenSea. We're a marketplace for non-fungible tokens. We started right when CryptoKitties launched in late 2017. So we've sort of been watching the space evolve for a while. And yeah, we're basically a place where you can go and buy, sell, auction any NFT in sort of a variety of ways. Sell it for a fixed price, do an English auction, sell bundles. I would say that we have sort of the broadest set of features for selling NFTs at the moment.
Cool. Kayvon or Alan?
Sure, I'll go next. Kayvon, founder, CEO of Foundation. Compared to OpenSea, in terms of this industry is still relatively young, but we're very young. We're 3 months kind of post launch, but we are very actively involved in kind of tokenizing work and getting that into a crypto context. And so we're right now very curated. So certainly in contrast to OpenSea. But actively exploring and expanding what we kind of think is possible with crypto, with artists, with creators in this space.
And I'm Alan, and I'm at Dapper Labs. I had the joy and fortune to join the CryptoKitties team after being a dedicated, obsessed, you might say, member of the CryptoKitties community from the launch of CryptoKitties, which really got me into Ethereum at the time. And so, yeah, so I've been a part of building up the CryptoKitties marketplace, exploring options for selling CryptoKitties and special like artist series kitties that we have with CryptoKitties, and also building and launching the NBA Top Shot marketplace and platform on Flow. So that's kind of my background.
Awesome. So my first question for this panel is, what are the top use cases for digital items? What get people excited? I know, Devin doesn't do curation. With OpenSea, it's Open21, but I know Kevin and Alan do. And I'd love to know about what is the most bestsellers items. Is it open worlds like Decentraland, or games, art, fashion, domain names, collectibles, or is it real world assets as derivatives on the Ethereum blockchain or Flow blockchain? I would love to learn more about this.
So one thing that I've always loved about NFTs is that it's a standard that describes essentially things, right? So, and in fact, things was a name that Dieter, who helped coin the term NFT, had considered as the name of the standard. It's a little bit too generic, but when you look around you in the real world, there's things everywhere, and each of them is unique, and this is not the same as that, even though they're similar. And so I think similarly in the digital world, everything is completely viable as an NFT, everything that is not, inherently fungible, right? Like money. And so the possibilities are endless. And what excites me is the fact that people have been exploring all aspects of it. And every time someone unlocks something new, like what if we did this with NFTs? What if we like put insurance as an NFT? What if we put NFTs together in a bundle? What if we sold land as NFTs? What if we tied it to physical real world objects? All of that is completely valid, and all of it like works so well. For me personally, my favorite applications are the purely digital ones. I mean, like I said, I got started with the love of digital collectibles, and blockchain is what enables the things to be distinct and enables my NFT to like be owned by me and nobody else, and it's provable, and I can give it or sell it, and then I don't have it anymore, which is just fundamentally different than everything digital we've experienced prior to blockchain. And so I really love how blockchain just makes that real world concept of a thing completely natural and real in the blockchain. And then to take it a step further, like on Flow, like it's even more so because it's sort of an abstraction on Ethereum. We're tracking ownership of a thing in a ledger. Like it's saying, well, now Alan doesn't own this thing anymore. Alex owns this thing. Whereas on Flow, it's actually a resource and I actually give it to you. And it's no longer physically, well, digitally in my wallet. It's now in yours. And so to me, the collectibles are so exciting, and that includes like digital land, but the digital native stuff is the most exciting to me, but I love that it applies so well to everything.
I would agree with all that. I think you framed it perfectly in a way that describe sort of what these things look like and what's new about them and all of that. So I'll provide just sort of a different lens on the question, more around what we've kind of seen in the market so far, which is obviously a very, very early, very primitive market. But CryptoKitties really kicked it off with this idea of like a digital collectible. Right after that, we saw tons of CryptoKitties clones that sort of tried to do similar things, and maybe didn't fully grasp what was unique about CryptoKitties, and kind of built like another breeding game or another like game that looked a lot like CryptoKitties. So we kind of saw that phase play out. Then I would say we saw sort of virtual land emerge as a really interesting asset class, and that continues to be a really interesting asset class on Ethereum. I think part of the reason being that typically those types of assets are higher value, and so it doesn't matter as much that there's a high transaction cost with moving them around, and you don't have to kind of move them around as frequently. And then most recently, I would say that the narrative or the theme has kind of shifted towards more creative works being put on blockchains, and has shifted a little bit away, maybe probably temporarily, from gaming, just because gaming does seem to require a little higher throughput transaction volume than we can support on Ethereum at the moment. And so what we're seeing in the market right now is these sort of like art and collectible use cases being really interesting and sort of engaging a market that's a bit broader than gaming, and has a little more of like a fit with kind of what's technologically possible on Ethereum right now. But I guess, I mean, I would just echo Alan's point, and I think all of these use cases are going to come to fruition at some point. It's just sort of like what plays best with what is available technically right at the moment. And I think art is sort of finding a really interesting fit with that. So that's what I would say the most excitement is around at the moment. And then I think gaming will probably have a resurgence when higher throughput transactions are enabled on blockchains like Flow.
I have to show off, you can't really see it, but I'm pointing here to a piece of, this is an NFT that I own that comes with the rights to print it. And so I did take advantage of those rights to print it and frame and put up. This is a piece of art by Katie Arrington. I am loving the art movement in the NFT space. And I agree that that's really blowing up right now. And it's really interesting to see people come into it with all kinds of different motivations. For me, it's just all about the art. Like I love the idea that I own this and that I can display it, and it's very cool. And there are people coming in with an investor mentality, and this is a good place to park my crypto and where it can appreciate along with the market. So it's all very interesting to me.
So I guess that's a good segue for us, because art is probably front and center with Foundation. I think we define ourselves more culturally, but art being a big facet of culture. And I think, the gaming scenario is certainly going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind. But right now, right, there are a lot of financial restrictions on what's viable and what can actually work on the infrastructure we have right now. And why art? Well, if you really look at first, art is understood as an asset, right? If you go into the real world, people value art immensely. If you look at OWS, which has taken, even really established art and kind of fractionalized it, that is a very crypto native evolution of the art market. And so why is art picking up on Ethereum? Because it's an even better kind of technology for what is already a very valuable marketplace. And there are just a number of features that we already have that are already validated that can work right now, which is that this art can be valued, it can be transacted, it can be done in a 10x more transparent way. We can encode royalties to artists so that they are benefiting from the appreciation of their work. They're not sitting on the sidelines. The existing art market in the analog world is just fraught with issues, fraught with inefficiencies, fraught with kind of sketchiness. And artists are really excited about a new solution. There is a meaningful desire to try something new, to put themselves in the center of the equation. And really what we're doing at Foundation is trying to build a very aesthetic, polished place for them to enter into this, because it is something they want. There's been almost, I've been in hundreds of conversations with artists and creators just in the past few months. There is very little skepticism of what this technology can do. It's really about, can I access it? Can I use it? Am I comfortable? Is there a context in which I feel comfortable doing that? And we're really trying to create that, because in my opinion, the technology works for this use case and it already has been validated. It's really a matter of now inviting those people and then also matching them with the phenomenal kind of upside that's available in crypto, right? Where you really very fluidly can participate in these markets now. Whereas art markets are actually incredibly difficult for most people to access. You need to perhaps have some connections in Chelsea or live in New York, live in London, right? And now, you can be in anywhere and have phenomenal taste and phenomenal kind of desire to collect, and that's accessible to you, right? Even artists in Europe, for example, that I've actually now been able to collect and own, that I'm not going to Europe that often now that I live in California and it's COVID. So that this is something that we really care about, and it's certainly something that I think is prime right now for the infrastructure we have to date.
Amazing. And actually, talking about infrastructure, I want to remind that digital items are not just NFT, right? Because Foundation, if I'm correct, are ERC20, but they're all SaaS, scarcity as a service. And so from that scarcity, which is the killer foundational property of NFTs, what is the value add that it provides versus the normal internet of copy paste without blockchain? Is it identity? Is it a badge of honor like reputation? Is it the community feel? Is it the composability, interoperability between games or assets? What is the thing that you are leveraging or you are seeing in your marketplaces about NFT that makes them so special? NFT or ERC20?
I would say the token type, I do think is going to increasingly be an abstraction, right? Like, so it's an engineering and technical detail of which exact token type. There's also ERC 1155, which is, I think, doing a good job of mashing up ERC 20 and ERC 721. So, which token type ultimately that gets funneled into the smart contract is a technical detail that I think will as the experiences get better, will be something less prominent. But the thing that to me that is interesting about the scarcity, and not to be crass about it, but is its ability to actually be trusted as a financial asset, right? So the token is very clearly capable of being understood as something you uniquely hold, right? So to my opinion, the way I always frame it is like the JPEG or the MP3 turn these things into like artwork or creations into massively accessible, massively distributable kind of concepts. And what we've done now is we've actually gone back to artists and we said, okay, well, you're benefiting from that in some ways because now your work can travel infinitely, but it's impossible to monetize. We're now going to give you a new the new file format, that's the opposite, right? Where you limit the supply of it and you can create a market around it. You can create a very strong like shelling point of understanding of why this is valuable, because there is only so many of it. And that to me is the current like use case that's understandable. Now, I think, Alex, you've mentioned Ian Lee's piece that came out today. That's the beginning, right? Because it is a file format, it is natively digital. It can get composed with and be added to now DeFi, DAOs, all these different kind of experiences that all of us who live in this kind of crypto native context know are possible. But in the immediate term, and this is where Foundation also is currently at, like it is the financial aspect of it, right? Because that's what's capable of being understood. But that actually will become commoditized, and I think where Ian's really kind of trying to lead the community towards is like, now that they're digital, they will be plugged into at a speed of light all these different types of experiences now, where like if you hold a piece of art, that could give you access to different experiences, that could give you access to financial services that can be easily composed with that valuable piece of art. Artists can get royalties from all the interactions that are happening with that piece of art from its like genesis, right? Because they minted the original token. So it's really, I think right now, strictly a financial wedge, right? Which I think is how crypto works. But then in the near future, and I can't tell you the timeline, although all the timelines seem like they're rapidly accelerating compared to where I thought they were, let's say, at the beginning of the year. And they're going to rapidly kind of expand into incredible experiences, right? Where you can put them into DAOs, you can put them into DeFi, and all of a sudden you're doing things you never thought possible.
And I would say that, to me, you're absolutely right that the one great advantage of these assets is that they are very clearly a store of financial value. I think that, to me, though, it's a second order effect of the scarcity. The scarcity and the desirability of the piece is what creates actual supply and demand, which is what creates value. And then blockchain just allows for very native transfer of that value and safe transfer and all of those things. But I think those timelines are actually super accelerated, and I'm excited because we'll be launching NBA Top Shot to the world, I'll say in the coming month here. And what we've seen already, we've had an early access beta, and these are sports collectibles that people are able to buy and trade and sell to each other in a marketplace. And even within our little like community of early access beta testers for Top Shot, we're seeing that there are fans that are coming in, and it's not about the money necessarily. The money is a factor, absolutely, but they want to be able to show off, I'm one of 50 people in the world that has this super rare LeBron James dunk that he did as a tribute to Kobe Bryant. And the scarcity ensures there's only ever going to be 50 of those legendary moments out there. And I want to be one of those 50 people who can say, like, I own this and you probably don't. And because of that tension, that's what gives it the value. Because if you want to get it from me, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to like get me to give that up. And while I own it, it comes with this sense of envy from other fans who wish they were me, wish they were one of the 50. And it comes with like this kind of status. I can say that I'm one of the biggest LeBron fans in the world, and I can prove it because I'm one of the few people who has the scarce, really, really loved digital asset.
And that moment I think is awesome because it's so mainstream, but there's also the crypto moment that we just had with Uniswap, right? Where everyone was, everyone who's crypto native was just touched by this incredible, moment, right? Where this protocol we've all been using for years just had its kind of like, I don't know, one of its peak cultural moments, right? I mean, there's no moment in time, I think, for Uniswap other than the airdrop that's captured people's imaginations. Hayden goes out there and bought, this incredible art that was made for that moment to kind of capture it. And, he paid a good deal of money for it. but you know what? I mean, it's just such a cool moment. The founder of the protocol is buying the art that's like kind of commemorating that moment. You can kind of imagine that becoming even more culturally relevant when Uniswap becomes what, I don't know, 100 times bigger than it is right now. And there's this really cool like artist collab, you know, founder bought the art kind of moment that you can kind of see becoming part of our culture. And you can just imagine that happening in every realm, right? And, you know, Alan, your moment about Kobe and LeBron, like that's just a much more mainstream version of that. And I think you're just going to see that happening all over the place, right? And there is value to these things, right? And I think like, you know, it'd be great to ask Hayden, like, why did you buy those things? And I think he would tell you like, this was a cool moment. This is the coolest way and for me to like kind of put, you know, my mark on it. And that artist who did that, I think was very savvy, right? To kind of say like, let's express this in some kind of artistic way to kind of capture the feeling that's happening right now. You're muted, Devin.
Sorry about that. I don't have, I think you guys put it pretty well. I don't have any thing to kind of add on that. I think all this stuff is, yeah, I think it's awesome stuff. I guess the only other lens I would take is sort of, Alex, you mentioned this interoperability piece, and I think that's been really key for OpenSea, right? Like having a primitive that, you know, looks like kind of like a JPEG, right? Where you have a reliable file format, a reliable way to interact with it, but it's a programmatic asset on a blockchain, and it's like, you know, we know that it'll behave in certain ways, has allowed us to, you know, create a marketplace that scales horizontally across, you know, anything from insurance to digital art to event tickets. And I think that's, you know, that's sort of the, I think the financial piece of it is sort of a second order effect of this sort of more underlying new, you know, world computer phenomenon, right? That allows people to build trusted programs that can interact with other programs. And that's what I think, you know, I think we'll see that just kind of get more and more weird and interesting. And a lot of the first use cases will be sort of trading and finance and all of the stuff we've seen in DeFi is sort of bleeding into NFTs. But, you know, I think on Flow, for example, we might see, you know, just like composable things that aren't really financial related, but, you know, are allowing, you know, digital assets to sort of be used in multiple different experiences and games. And you don't have to do as much with like the value of an asset going up or down, but just like, you know, the fact that you can kind of trustlessly interoperate with these programs leading to other sort of second order effects. So yeah, I would agree with what has been said. I think, you know, this is kind of what's happening on Ethereum right now. And, you know, I think it's super exciting. And I think there's just more and more to come over the next couple of years.
Awesome. And so to that point, if interoperability is a huge thing, if the art is being exchanged by people, traded, retraded multiple times, it begs the question around liquidity, because of course these items are way more scarce. They're non-fungible. That's the point. But then how do we solve the liquidity problem? How to make fair prices when these things are so rare that someone could manipulate the market, or there could be some downside effects of not having a token that is very much traded like fungible items? Is it fractionalization of NFTs or ERC20? Is it having a bonding curve where the price is set by an algorithm rather than the market? Is it interest-bearing DeFi asset like we saw Aave Gotchi, which I think is on top of the DeFi protocol Aave bearing interests? Or is it having an NFT as a collateral like we saw with NFTFi and others? Is this even a problem, or are you comfortable with these being super rare and thus widely valued in different, like in extreme deltas, right?
I think that's really an interesting thing that everybody is exploring, and there's so many different answers, and you gave awesome examples of each of these different avenues that people are exploring, and I think all of them have promise. Again, to me, one of the more interesting things that I've seen kind of evolve naturally in this space was when this concept of wrapped CryptoKitties came to be. This was completely community driven. A community member built a smart contract and built an interface for it. And eventually it got so popular that we had to support it at CryptoKitties. We had to build it into the CryptoKitties app itself because like we just couldn't not, right? And so that's possible because of open standards and just the blockchain in general. But what it provides was liquidity for any cat that you just wanted to get rid of. You just wanted to get something for that cat. There's now a market for it because you can wrap it into an ERC20 token and then exchange that on Uniswap. And at any given time, there are people who are like, yeah, I value a cat at 50 cents. Or right now with the explosion in DeFi and NFTs right now, I think we've seen it recently. The price of wrapped kitties has jumped to, I've seen $15, $17, completely unsustainable. I would not myself buy a wrapped kitty token for that price. But it provides instant liquidity. And what's interesting is now people are taking that because by default, you're getting the least valuable cats if you're buying a wrapped crypto kitty, and then you have the option to change it for a cat. But people want to bring that kind of liquidity now to the more scarce Gen Zero market for CryptoKitties, for example. And so the community, again, has just like built this wrapped Gen Zero kitty contract, and it actually is able to check on chain, is this cat a Gen Zero? And you can only wrap the cat if it meets those requirements. And then again, you can get instant liquidity for any of your Gen Zero cats. And on the contract, like that's guaranteed to be scarce. We can't make more than 50,000 Gen Zeros, like the contract won't let us. So all of these pieces interact to create this kind of semi-fungible state where if you want an individual cat, you can have it. If you just want the instant liquidity, if you want the value of a cat generally, now you can do that. And you can do it in different asset classes, the Gen Zero asset class or the generic CryptoKitty asset class. And to me, that's been super interesting to watch come up. But it's just one of those examples that you gave, fractionalization and others being very much just as relevant. And I especially do like the NFTFi collateralization liquidity option. And I think that that's going to be really promising in the future where just individuals can say, I value your NFT at this, and I'm happy to get that as collateral if you default on your payment or receive interest payments if you go that route.
I would say, Alex, it's really relative, right? Because I don't think we need to hold ourselves to the standard of like perfect liquidity. These aren't stable coins, right? So, Curve.finance is a perfect tool for swapping stable coins, and that's a different world. You need to go to the existing analog versions of what we're creating. And the idea that the art market is efficient and there isn't any of this behavior going on is ridiculous, right? And so already on day one, in my opinion, we're already better. We have royalty structures, we have transparency, we have verifiable scarcity. We have so many elements here that just don't exist. And so it's not, oh, are there problems? Yes, there are problems. And what I would tell you at like Foundation, for example, is we're throwing incredible engineering efforts at this, right? We have bonding curves, we have auctions, we have different token types. It's really like we're gonna add all these different features. But I think the really powerful thing here, and this is my opinion, and maybe someone would disagree, is that it's already better. I think like literally the transparency and the royalty structure that we've been able to build in, where creators are fundamentally benefiting from the work and that the ability for it to appreciate exists, and for the original creator to benefit from that, fundamentally already just day one better, right? That doesn't exist in the analog world. And so I wouldn't want to go and focus on these problems like illiquidity, because that's not solved in the analog world. And will we make a dent in that in a big way with platforms like OpenSea and interoperability and composability and the vastness of the internet connecting to these things? Like it will improve. And I wouldn't want to, let's not go into this with a stable coin liquidity pool mentality. That's not what this is. These are cultural markets, and they're already incredibly skewed against creators in the real world. and we're making this 10 times better by bringing them into this transparent digital world. And that's the thing I would focus on.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't really have anything else to add to that.
Okay.
I would add that I completely agree as well. I gave an example of liquidity for cats, but again, by default, those are liquidity for cats that nobody like particularly wants, right? But at the high end, there are cats that people very much want. It does not work to try to put those onto a bonding curve, right? It just doesn't make any sense at all. And so, but I completely agree that by being on the blockchain, every seller has access to a completely global, open marketplace. They can reach anybody in the world. All you need is one person who wants that thing, and you can trustlessly trade it with them. You know you're going to receive payment. They know they're going to receive the authentic digital item. There's no worries whatsoever. This is something that is mind blowing. And then
10 times better. It's 10 times better.
At least 10 times better.
It's global. It works. Yeah, exactly. It's global. It works. It's internet. You need an internet connection. If you're a collector in Ethiopia and you want to collect somebody from something in Germany, that is not a problem, right?
There's not even currency problems because we all have these shared currencies and these mechanisms for translating currencies seamlessly. And then
one thing, and just to double down on that, Alan, is like, for example, we've been doing a big push because we are using DAI as the kind of base currency in our markets across the board. And that's just awesome because that's a stable currency. And it's decentralized. And so that means that people all around the world are interacting with this stuff now. We don't have to support, 10 different flows for 10 different countries. We just work globally day one. And if you think about the cultural space and a lot of the values of artists and creators, they're wanting the world to work better. Like that's why they're kind of creating this work and putting it out there. And so when you can map that to the financial infrastructure that they're using, like go talk to an artist about the art market. Like they're not excited. It's the shadiest, weirdest, fragmented world out there. And then, you can just look at that. Like, I really think this isn't a matter of crypto not working and not being good for these people. It's a matter of them not understanding it and it being scary and weird and intimidating. And if we can get past a lot of that, which we're already on our way, and I think this explosion in NFT interest right now is going to get us there, or put a big dent in it, you're gonna start seeing mass adoption, in the coming years as you see these success stories. This 17-year-old kid, selling this, that contract has royalties baked into it, right? That's not the end of the story. That story is going to go on and on and on. That's really, really powerful. And you're going to see people become more independent because of that. You're going to see new career paths open up. I mean, this is big time stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the art market is one example of that, but we see it all over the place.
Exactly. One example. The music industry is no better.
Right.
Look at Kanye West's tweet about the contracts that get thrown at artists who are trying to sign on to record labels. Like that, let's go look at galleries and museums. Like, let's just keep on going down the list of all the institutions that kind of control our cultural realm. And like Alan's right. Like, I don't mean to focus on art exclusively. It's just the one that I think is so ripe.
And it's not even I completely agree that these institutions are kind of trying to control these markets in some cases. And in other cases, even the most decentralized marketplaces that we have in the physical world, I'm thinking here of eBay, right? And again, sports collectibles.
Yes.
Been looking and talking to a lot of sports collectibles, and they have the worst experience trying to sell. Like, they have this valuable, again, like a LeBron James rookie card. They want to sell it on eBay. They have to trust the post office is going to deliver it. They have to trust that the person who receives it isn't going to scam them. And there's a large percentage of the time they get scammed. And the buyer on their side has to trust that what they receive is an authentic piece, digital or real collectible, right? They have to trust. There's all this trust in the system, and all of these fees and wait times and risks that are involved, and all of that.
Alan, let's not forget about ownership. So exactly. Now you're a massive eBay seller, right? You're providing all this liquidity and revenue into that company. Do you have any stake in eBay? Are you given eBay stock? This is the nail in the coffin. It's like, okay, great. Now you're one of the largest, market makers, or you're one of the largest artists on one of our platforms, you're gonna get compensated for that. Let's just Uniswap wasn't a one-off moment. That is the future, right? Jesse Walden can tell you all about that, right? And so, when you build something like Foundation that has crypto rails as its kind of engine, that's coming down the pipe, and that's why you also saw Socks just drive a whole other round of interest. And we have our own version of that, right? We have the Culture as Currency shirt, and that sold out. There was $10,000 that went into that in like 24 hours as soon as people realized like what Socks was. And that's just so powerful. And there's no difference between that and an eBay market, right? It's just that, it's people haven't figured out what this means yet, and it's big time stuff.
Awesome. I think it's something super underrated about NFTs and also ERC20 via bonding curve, which forces the primary issuance price is royalties, basically secondary sales or primary sales are forced to programmatically give the royalties to the artist. And so now I want to talk about a blocker that many people have around crypto native first NFTs. And it was reiterated by SBF recently, which is, can't you just download them? Which is a quite lame argument for non-physical NFTs. But I want to see your point of view of Foundation right now does actual physical redemption, as far as I'm aware. But
no, we span physical and digital, Alex, and the reason is exactly because of that tweet, which is there's no credence to it, by the way. That's not how it works. If you go look at the MoMA and look at the canvases that just have a single color on them, like that, I could do that, right? That tweet reminds me of that comment when you go to the MoMA and you're like, oh, I could do this. It's like you're just completely missing the cultural relevance of the art. And well, you didn't do it, right? And that's the point, right? Someone else went and did it, and they kind of captured that. And the NFT to me is exactly that, right? And so like if you don't get it, I don't care. It's like most people can't appreciate a lot of different things. It doesn't matter, right? The market's going to still work without them. But then, that's exactly why we, for example, try to blur the line between physical and digital. Like we're going to have, a lot of our artists right now, and if you go to Foundation and you explore some of the markets, they do both because they absolutely want to be exploring and amplifying this new digital world. But they also know that there's a lot of people that aren't there yet, and they're going to ground them in the physical. And that to me is something that, the redeemable token is just like the key wedge. But if I really think about where the space gets super interesting, it's when it gets very digital, right? So that you have $100,000, $1 million NFTs that represent seminal work by people that have enormous cultural clout. And that gets thrown into a DAO, that gets thrown into into DeFi, right? That digital world is really interesting. Do we need to get people to get there through the physical? Probably, and that's why we do redeemable tokens.
Yeah, just to expand, I think you sort of touched on this idea, but I think a very concrete argument for those sort of ideas that you could just sort of download the image and send it around is you don't buy a piece of art for the raw materials. Raw materials don't cost $1 million, and I could pretty much reconstruct the Mona Lisa.
Great point, Devin.
The Mona Lisa, but I couldn't sell it for $1 million, right? So the thing is, or the reality is, the same phenomenon exists in the physical world with the ability to pretty much replicate anything for the most part, anything in the physical world, and especially art, right? It's very replicatable. It just so happens that it's much more replicatable in the digital world, and we've never had a notion of property rights in the digital world, right? So I think that's the best. That's kind of for anyone who's looking for a sort of comeback, as it were, to people who make that argument. Not that it's a bad argument to make. They're just trying to understand the space. But I think talking about the ability to replicate a physical piece of art is a good way to kind of, I've found that to be a very effective way to convey this this idea to people who are, just kind of learning about it.
Yeah,
I mean, the counterintuitive thing here is I actually think that the art that becomes massively replicated and becomes viral will actually generate the most valuable NFTs. So the really, really interesting response to that is I think artists would love for it to be replicated, because then minting that token creates like the more cultural relevance something has, the more people understand it, right? Everyone knows what the Mona Lisa is. Like I just told you what the Mona Lisa is, you immediately have the image in your head, you know what it is, right? And I mean, the billions of people are in that category. So again, MP3s and JPEGs are amazing. Like let's use them. The interesting about tokens is now you let that creator of those files benefit from it. And I think like, virality and NFTs are going to be a phenomenal mix.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the best comeback to that question is that, for instance, redeemed NFT of socks. So that will not give you any socks. We're selling like crazy on OpenSea still. So even though the physical item was gone, the digital item was still pretty much valued by the community.
100%, because think of how many people now know about socks. That's 10x in the last week.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, I want to talk about this intersection now between NFT and DAOs. We saw whale and meme being literally the only counter signal in the past few days of like a started bear market. And so it really seems like NFT are starting to get uncorrelated to like the macro DeFi, which sounds like the dominant narrative. And what do you think of those community of people? Like maybe these are the autonomous like solutions for curation on agnostic platforms like OpenSea, which means that now OpenSea doesn't even need a curated element. The crowd will just do it for them. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts on whale and meme.
Well, I'm a big fan of meme. I thought it was just a super cool experiment, this idea of sort of having a NFT that has sort of the history behind it is that someone had to have staked for some duration of time, some number of tokens, invested that sort of time element to actually mine this thing. I think that's just a cool, that's just a really innovative way to distribute NFTs. And, I think what it did really well was it sort of combined this idea of farming, which was really popular and which is continuing to be popular in the DeFi community with, some farming a non-fungible asset. I think we'll see more and more experiments like that, where there's sort of this like proof of work associated with the creation of an NFT. I mean, you can even think about Foundation sort of being a similar type of model where there's this proof of physical asset behind it. So I think, those are sort of some of the ingredients that go into what makes a particular asset valuable. It's like kind of what's the provenance of it, what's the history of it, what did someone do to actually create it. So I think, I could see, we'll have to see kind of what happens on Ethereum with like gas prices and all, and like whether we're able to support all of these kind of compelling experiments. But I could see there being a lot more experiments. There's just so much design space for new types of things like meme. So I'm pretty excited to see what happens.
If we're just gonna quickly talk about gas prices, I mean, in experiments, I totally agree, and I think that's why, so for example, Foundation did just go over to XDAI, where the transaction costs are in the fractions of a penny, and it's because we're in a much more experimental space, right? The idea of $20 to $50 transactions really gets in the way of saying, hey, can I do something wild or interesting or new? And we're optimized for that. And I think Devin framed it right, which is we need more experiments still. This is very, very early. And it's very cool to see the technology really start to get there. I think Flow is going to offer new opportunities as well. But yeah, experiments, we are so early. This conversation is hilarious, right? If we're going to like look back in 5-10 years and remember we were on this panel and, people are selling $1 billion NFTs or whatever, that are like powering DAOs that have thousands of people in them or millions of people in them. So it's experiments are really still there. And we're really trying to push people to also say, blur the physical, blur the digital, blur what art can be as you understand it in the analog world and create that new market in the digital world. And it'll probably look like memes, right? And it'll probably have a lot of that mimetic quality to them that then produce the most valuable art.
And to your point there earlier about community ownership of a platform, DAOs are a great way to actually implement that and have it be meaningful with governance tokens. And about experimentation, what I love about Whale and the community that Whale Shark has built around his collection of NFTs is that it is just basically a huge experiment. And what if I have this collection of NFTs and I put them in this thing called the vault, and I say that they're kind of backing this token that like represents the community, and I just invite people in to like take part in it, and what happens? And the answer is amazing things happen. And if you drop into the Whale community, it's one of the most vibrant Discord communities I've ever seen. It's constantly loud. There's so many things going on. There's events. And it's very cool that has just sprung out of an experiment, and is going to be tied to a DAO eventually. But it's just tied to this whole idea of trying things out, experimenting with governance tokens, and all of those aspects that blockchain is just so exciting for.
Awesome.
Love it. Yeah, it's a great experiment.
Awesome. So now I want to touch on a topic, which is we are in 2035. Apple VR headset has killed the market. Oculus Rift is now a commodity. So like, and your three companies have gone extremely successful. And are we going to see, an OpenSea city online? Because we're saying we're blurring the physical and the digital. That's clearly what's going to happen, right? Are we going to be sitting with like cards representing seats in the NBA Top Shop, or, I don't know, Foundation, like live VR fashion shows? So really excited about your thoughts here.
Well, I mean, for example, because of the pandemic has done interesting things, where in the sense that like a lot of the timelines and ideas that I had when I started this at the beginning of the year have just rapidly accelerated. So there's been digital fashion pieces, like, the fashion world is in a lot of ways, completely impacted by this and the way that they were doing things. And so there was someone, I'm forgetting their name at the moment, but there was a phenomenal piece of like digital fashion that went viral on Instagram and basically kind of replicated the runway, right? And it took all the energy that usually goes into that context and captured it. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see now more versions of that. And so, tokens are going to be the native way of accomplishing value in those contexts. And I think the interesting thing, in 2035, in my opinion, you'll not even want to talk about this or think about these things because they'll just be working. It's just like the internet is today. No one's talking about, sending packets of data to different protocols at the TCP/IP layer or whatever. It's not how normal people want to think when, they're not engineers building the infrastructure. They're just using the technology to do fashion, to do music, to do art, right? That actually is what they should be thinking about. So yeah, by 2035, in my opinion, there's a bunch of deep backend engineers that talk about the token standards and fiddle with them and make them, more efficient and powerful. But the rest of the world is just taking it for granted and uses them at a billion, transactions per second kind of mentality.
Yeah, the thing that I love about 2020 is for those of us, and those are the people here on this call, the people who are watching this, who are looking, the future. You can see the future already. You can participate in the future already. One of the things that got me into collecting crypto art is the fact that it's completely interoperable with crypto voxels. And I can buy a plot of land and I can take my NFT and I actually just share a link to OpenSea. And then I have my piece of art and I can put it on my wall. I can scale it. I can put lighting around it and I can create a gallery and share this experience of, hey, come look at all of my art in a way that I've curated and I've like presented it in a very specific way. And I've built this environment around it, and I can wander around the world and see other people's art galleries, and so many people are sharing their art in something like crypto voxels or some of these other virtual worlds. And like, so today you can experience that, and it's relatively basic. You know, again, when we look at this 15 years down the line, it's going to be completely different, but it's going to be just the same, but it's just bigger and more people participating in it, and it's going to be completely natural. And so I think that you can get a sneak preview of the future today, and that's just really exciting.
I would agree with all that. I think crypto voxels and Decentraland are kind of these, really primitive, but they really, if you go in them, you kind of realize what it would look like, right? And if you add VR in the mix, that's sort of I mean, I don't know what the timeline will look like for kind of hyper realistic virtual reality experiences and where we'll be. Oh, thanks. Where we'll be in 2035, but yeah, you could imagine sort of, most of our lives are spent inside of these. I guess that's sort of a parallel trend. The only other thing I was going to mention was I think, it'll be interesting to see over the next, I guess we're talking about like a 15-year time horizon, sort of, this is the open worlds forum, and there's also the closed worlds, right? And the closed worlds are doing quite well as well, right? You have Fortnite with its own sort of ecosystem that has become something of a social network for the next generation. And I do think I think we're going to see some interesting sort of clashes between these, quite popular closed worlds like Fortnite and Horizon, which is Facebook's virtual reality world that they're building, versus sort of the grassroots open worlds that are just so much earlier, but like Decentraland and crypto voxels that allow for things like property rights and free market economies versus sort of the closed centrally controlled economies you have in traditional games. So hard to sort of make forecasts around how those dynamics will play out, but I do think that we'll start to see sort of a clash of those two models, sort of in a similar vein that we saw like a clash between internet native products versus the old sort of traditional distribution mechanisms before the internet sort of took off. So, but yeah, I agree with what's been said before. I think it's going to be super exciting.
You see that playing out like today in places like Fortnite versus Apple. And then I think that one really interesting thing for anyone who's interested in the space to check out is Tim Sweeney gave a talk at SIGGRAPH. I think it might have been a couple years ago now, but he laid out a vision for how we get to this metaverse, essentially. And you can see that that's what they're building now. And that's why they're fighting these battles with Apple, right? Because they're trying to build interoperability and open systems and open worlds. And they're trying to lead that charge. And I think it's really interesting. And anyone who's interested in the space and hasn't heard that talk or you read a transcript, it's worth checking out.
Love it. Awesome. So we covered a ton. I think we have 5 minutes left, but there's one topic we can talk about still, which I really like, which is identity. So right now, I think Alan and Kayvon's platforms are opinionated. There's curation of artists. OpenSea doesn't have it. I still see, Dapper Labs and Foundation letting anyone tokenize on their platform in the future. And so we don't want to be on the other criticism of NFT, which is what if I tokenize someone else's work? And so how do you see that problem? Is this something that you care about right now? Have you seen some instances of solutions to counteract that problem? Because we don't want other people to make profit on other people's work, right? So curious about your thoughts here.
I would say it's a very solvable problem, right? So, and it's actually, we're already sort of seeing it arise in the field. I think the other day someone created, or it happens all the time actually, someone creates a fake meme, someone created a fake meme card and sold it. And it was kind of unclear to some people, that it was not associated with the actual meme contract. It was I think it was created on Rarible, right? But at the end of the day, the technology is robust, and it shows, what contract address is this associated with it, when was it minted, and you can go back and you can trace and say this was not the original. And so websites like OpenSea Foundation, Dapper Labs interfaces that check that can do a good job and let people know that this is not a real thing. And eventually, like, there'll always be an incentive to try, but these sort of gatekeepers and there will be consensus around like which is the original and which isn't. Maybe probably to start with, it'll be centralized parties like websites like ours that decide that. In the future, it's probably going to be DAOs, but like I think it's actually a very solvable problem, and that's kind of what blockchain is good at, right?
And this is just, I think that Devin, your points just really map to progressive decentralization for me, and that's something that we really believe in at Foundation, which is you start with curation, you start with you should know, if you go to Foundation, you're interacting with a token there, it's the right one, and it's the artist that an established artist. But then, we have no desire to stay in such a centralized kind of context. We absolutely believe in the underlying technology and what it does best, but we just need to progressively get there, right? So what we do is we're going to kickstart everything, and we're going to create a strong culture and a strong brand to kind of create this fire. But then as soon as that fire is going and it's rip roaring, it's like we're exiting to the community, right? We're not going to stay this kind of centralized company that kind of becomes a nightmare, for future generations. It's like we'll put the power of the tools that we are using right now to create the reality, and we'll put those in the hands of our community. And that's something that I think creates identity, a space for identity, right? Because the artists can come onto our platform and feel safe and know that they're being respected in the ways that they want, and that the kind of thriving but often chaotic world of crypto isn't going to kind of impinge on their brand or cause chaos for their brand.
Awesome. Kayvon, Devin, Alan, thank you so much for coming. I think we wrapped up the hour. Super excited. I think we've seen some early hype, but we are like 1% of the race.
Yes, so early. And the hype will go away, and you got to still be there, and you got to still push it forward.
Right. Yeah. Of
and
course.
Alan and Devin can say that with more conviction than I can, having already been through multiple rounds.
Right, but it's still you're still extremely early. Don't worry, Kayvon.
Yes, we're gonna earn our stripes. We're gonna get through it. We're gonna ride multiple waves. We'll still be here.
Amazing. Yeah, all right. Well, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, we saw a lot of, if there are any sort of like founders out there, we definitely saw a lot of people like become disenchanted with the space in through 2018, that I think personally, I think it would have been cool if they stuck around and, continued. And then a lot of the ideas that they had back then are now sort of becoming
mainstream.
Yeah. Well, my takeaway on this is that the next bull market, there's going to be tons of more talents pouring in. And so that's not a problem. Like, we will have a ton of talent, and it's just bull markets correlates with every metric, right? And I'm sure it's going to be awesome. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for this session.
Thank you, Alex. Yes.
No worries. Super happy to host, and really honored. I think your companies are going to be amazing. They already are. And speak to you soon.
Talk soon. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Devin.
Yes, thank you all.
Thanks, guys.